Alright, Victorum Gaming fans and SPQR fans, we're back with another video covering the second half of the equipment that we have in the game. That's basically the armor and other sort of miscellaneous equipment. We'll cover that in just a second. So there is a wide range of armor, and each faction has access to different things, with Rome generally having some of the best of the best as far as equipment goes on offense and defense. So in some cases, the armor doesn't affect your movement, but the heavier armor will slow your units down. It is worth mentioning, of course, if these are mounted units, it actually doesn't slow you down. So in a lot of cases, it's worth buying that heaviest armor just to get the best possible save. The only thing that will slow cavalry down is if you actually go with barding on the cavalry as well. So if you have access to like a cuirass on your cavalry and you have the points for it, you're basically just building a tank. So something to consider there. So animal skins, don't affect your move and just give you a simple +1 to your armor. So usually a fairly cheap option. That's all it needs to do. So in a lot of cases, you see that on some melee units, but is it really worth it on like a skirmisher type unit? That just depends, I guess. If you really feel you need that extra armor save, by all means, or if you have the points for it, or if the models represent that, that'd be kind of cool. But again, it's not the greatest, but sometimes something's better than nothing. Arrow aprons are kind of a weird upgrade, so they don't affect the armor, but basically just give you a chance to reroll any failed armor check made against ranged attacks. So typically, really, just you'll see that in your various Greek lists. Is it really worth the points? It depends. Again, a lot of times the Greeks will have decent enough armor, and you'll have your normal like large shield type parries. So a combination of that really should be enough to deal with most ranged fires. So, but if you feel particularly worried if someone's bringing a army that just is nothing but ranged attacks, maybe the arrow apron is a worthwhile upgrade. So something to consider there. Bucklers, sort of the smallest of the shield class, don't actually help your armor save. So basically the buckler gives you a parry, but only against close combat attacks, so nothing against ranged. So again, not affecting your armor. None of the shields do affect your armor, but a parry in a lot of cases can possibly be as good as armor. Chainmail shirt is very common across multiple different armies, so you see that in Rome, sometimes some of the Greek armies, and others as well. It does slow you down by 1. Again, cavalry, ignore that unless there's barding involved. But it does give you a +3 to your armor, which is really solid. So that's about as good as it gets really for foot infantry. The cuirass also gives you +3, but it is a -2. So super heavy, really will slow a foot unit down. But again, some armies actually don't have access to chainmail, so the cuirass is the other option. But again, depending on how you build your army and things that you need to accomplish with whatever unit might get that, and usually it's a fair chunk of points per model as well. It's certainly fantastic protection, but is it worth being that much slower? So certainly a unit like that, you might really consider buying a horn just to get that extra movement or action once per game. But certainly a slow tank like unit. Helmet does not give you any movement penalty whatsoever, but much like the animal skin, it's really just a +1 to your armor. And you cannot combine a helmet with other types of armor except a shield, so definitely worth keeping in mind there. And it's kind of a little bit weird. It took a while to actually remember that when we first started playing this. And basically they say just assume every other piece of armor, like a chainmail shirt and stuff like that, already comes with a helmet to help represent that better save. So definitely pay attention to that. A lot of units will have access to like helmets, chainmail shirts, and stuff like that, but you can't combine the helmet with anything else. And usually the helmet's pretty cheap, but again, very minimal protection there. Large shield is pretty ubiquitous across, again, so many armies, and especially Rome. So no actual armor save increase, but it's 2 parries that you can use against ranged attacks. So yeah, 2 parries versus melee or ranged. So just fantastic. The best of the shield class, really. However, one thing to keep in mind, which is easy to forget, if a unit of large shields or carrying large shields flees from combat, they have to take a bravery check, and if they fail, they will drop and lose their shields for the rest of the game. So anytime you can force that on a unit that has large shields, so things like, again, just use the Roman Legionary as an example, getting through one layer of their defenses like that is huge. So very worthwhile to try and break that. Leather armor is, again, just very light armor. Often, in skirmish troops or things like that. Again, usually fairly cheap. Doesn't impede your movement, but again, it's just minimum protection. But again, sometimes that's better than nothing. Linothorax is pretty much the most common Greek armor that you'll see. It does impede your movement a little bit, but it does provide +2 protection. So it's good medium armor. A little unfortunate, again, that it does impede your movement, but still really solid overall. So for Greeks, really don't leave home without it if you're like hoplite troops and stuff like that. And then we come to the single best armor in the game, which of course belongs to the Imperial Rome. That's the Lorica Segmentum. So it does not impede your movement, but also gives you a +3 to your armor. So this is what makes Rome so particularly nasty in this game. Again, super heavy infantry armor. Put that and combine that with again, legionaries are typically packing a sword and a large shield, so there's 3 parries there. So it's so tough to shift those legionary units. So the only thing that's really keeping that in check is the fact that they cost a fair chunk of points per model. But Lorica is just absolutely fantastic, and if you can have cavalry or heroes that are mounted, with that, and combine that with the cavalry rule, you've got just rock solid defense there. Scale armor is pretty cool too, and you really see that with the Persians. It's basically just a better linothorax, so +2 on your armor, but also doesn't impede your movement. So foot troops that have that are, again, going to be a little bit faster, and just, again, really solid if it's on cavalry as well. And then the small shield basically just gives you a parry. Certainly no downsides to it. It's better than the buckler in the sense that it will also parry at least one ranged attack and also close combat, of course. So small shield certainly definitely has its place too. So it's just not as good as the large shield, but also usually very cheap to upgrade into. Then we move over to the remaining equipment. So barding basically is a +1 to your cavalry armor, but this is what will actually reduce cavalry speed. Camels are cool. Some armies do have access to that. So treated the same as those riding horses, except it may not double its move score for 1 move or melee action in every phase, nor do they get barding. However, the unit may force horse-mounted enemy units it's in close combat with to reroll all successful melee checks, so that's actually super strong. If the camel unit charges a horse-mounted enemy unit, the enemy unit must make an immediate will to fight check. So horses don't like camels, and so whenever you can take advantage of that, certainly very strong there. I do believe Imperial Rome gets access to those, and I think Persia as well. And I think there might be an option in the melee, or not the melee, but the mercenary list as well. Horn, we've covered that many times when we're reading the factions, so probably the single best unit upgrade. Again, a 3rd action once per battle. So it's a disposable upgrade, but sometimes that 3rd action can be game-changing if used at the right time. Horses, many benefits to the horses, so cavalry are very strong. So you can double your move score for 1 move or melee action in every phase. Then you get +1 armor and +1 hits. Really what they mean there is an extra wound. And unless a horse is bought as an option for a model, these increases will have already been factored in. I think there were a couple of typos, though, that got addressed in the FAQ, so keep that in mind. And here's where short spears and long spears are awesome, because they gain lethal 2 when charging. So when we review the weapons, again, short spear doesn't really seem all that impressive on its own. However, on cavalry, it actually becomes really good. So, and you don't add the normal lethal bonus to that. It's just lethal 2, which is really good. Again, armor worn by the model, the rider, doesn't affect the move score, only the barding does. So again, a cuirass on a cavalry model is super good. So it's actually, ends up being like +4 armor. So saving on 2s is pretty neat. Obviously, the unit type changes to cavalry, and then when gaining the benefits from charging a unit consisting solely of cavalry models, it gains a +1 bonus on its melee checks as well. So cavalry, very strong. Pila, again, is going to be a Roman thing. So really, as far as rules go, the Pila may only be used once in every battle by a unit not already engaged in combat against an enemy unit that's moving into combat with it. The enemy will gain no bonus for charging and may not use any small or large shield to parry in the first melee action. So another worthwhile thing to consider upgrading your Roman units with, just in combination with the Romans' layers of defense, basically. So you're stripping the enemy of their charge bonuses, so you don't necessarily need to be the one charging always with the Romans. You can let them try to charge you, as long as you haven't thrown your Pila yet. And then, so they're not going to get bonuses. You have all the parries between your sword and large shields, and then you still have the really good Roman armor, whether it's the chainmail shirts or the Lorica segmentum. And again, this whole combination of these things is what just makes the Roman legionary units so dang powerful. The standard is the other typical upgrade for a lot of units, and not necessarily always worth buying in comparison to the Horn, just because, again, that third action once per game is just so good, but certainly worth considering at least a standard or two for your army. So any unit within 12 of a friendly standard may reroll any failed bravery checks. So and a lot of times that's better than just actually having a bonus. Certainly worth considering at least, again, a couple of those and placing them where they can overlap as many possible units that you can. So, and that basically covers the equipment. So, again, lots of things to consider. Again, size of your units, points available that you have, how much defense do you feel you really need, things like that. A lot of times it seems like it's better to stay away from just like if a unit only has access to like a +1 armor, whether it's like helmets or animal skins. If you feel you need the protection, that might be worth it if you're going to do a little bit of, planning on like a little bit of like melee work and stuff like that. But by and large, save the points for like the combat heavy units, and the points that you've saved there, a lot of times more bodies is better than fewer bodies with better protection. But again, always remember, helmets can't be combined with anything else, and regardless of how heavy the armor is, if it's on a cavalry model, it doesn't slow the cavalry's movement down. Only barding will do that. And again, there's the many benefits of horses, and certainly units that have armies that have access to camels is certainly something to consider there. Again, personally, I feel like the Horn, any unit that can have access to a Horn, should probably consider getting that. It's usually 10 points for the unit. A third action once per game is absolutely critical. Being able to have more actions than your opponent usually should result in you doing better. And then again, standard is worthwhile, at least one for the army, and just putting it in a good spot. And again, a lot of the hero talents will also have a similar effect, so something to consider there too. And then again, for Rome, if you have access to the Pila, it's almost always worth it. It just depends on your points that you're spending, but just being able to nullify an opponent's charge bonuses is huge. So that can certainly take the steam out of their sails as they're coming in, and then you just do what the Roman units do, which is just start grinding down your enemies and then wiping them off the board. So, and that basically covers all of that for you guys. So if you have enjoyed the video, give us a like and a subscribe if you haven't already, and then we'll see you in the next one.